the chess world has been shook. The world chess champion Magnus Carlsen has lost to Nodirbek Abdusattorov, an 18-year-old from Uzbekistan, in round 5 of this year's Tata Steel Chess. And this is, I think, one of those rare times where Magnus lost 2 games in a row. Yesterday he lost to Anish Giri, and today he lost to Nodirbek. So let's see what happened. So Magnus opens with c4. We have the English defense, and Nodirbek responds with c5. We have the symmetrical English. We have knight to f3, knight to f6, knight c3, knight c6, the standard theory. And in this position, Magnus plays e3, opens up his bishop, and plans to play the move d4. We have e5 for that reason, trying to prevent this, and also grabbing some space in the center. And we have bishop to e2. Usually in these positions, the main move is to play d4, but Magnus chooses to play bishop e2, which is a calmer move. So after bishop e2, we have d5. And in this position, the best move for white is to play d4 and to increase the tension in the center. But Magnus doesn't choose this. He takes the pawn. We have c takes d5, knight takes d5, and castles. Magnus puts his king to safety. So after castles, we have bishop to e7, simply developing, and black is also preparing here to castle. And now we have bishop to b5. And this isn't Magnus's first time playing this position. He has reached it before against the MVL, but he's playing a different opponent this time, and in the other game it was a blitz game. So let's see what's different here. So after bishop e5, we have knight takes c3. You can see clearly after bishop e5, the threat is to take the pawn. So black has to do something about this. So we have knight to c3, b takes c3. You don't want to capture away from the center, and we have queen to c7, protecting the e5 pawn. We have d4. Magnus strikes in the center. We have takes, 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 and knight takes. And in this position, black has managed to equalize pretty much because he has liquidated a lot of pieces. His king will go to safety really soon, and there's pretty much nothing to worry about. So there is some pressure on the knight on c6, so that's why we have bishop d7 in this position, protecting. And after bishop d7, Magnus plays knight f3, which is a bit inaccurate. The better move was to simply capture on c6 a couple of times and play the bishop to b2, where it would put a lot of pressure along this long diagonal, and it would sort of prevent black from going there anytime soon. That was the better alternative. But okay, after bishop d7, Magnus plays knight to f3, and we have bishop to f6, attacking the rook. Now Magnus in this position chose to sacrifice the rook by playing bishop to a3, but the better move was to simply preserve the rook and continue playing on this game. But Magnus plays bishop to a3 to capture some initiative. The point of this move is when you take the rook, which happened in the game, you have queen to a1, and now the queen is targeting g7, and this bishop is preventing this king from castling the short side. So Magnus is hoping that the king will castle long, which does end up happening, and now he has a lot of pressure to exert along the c file. His bishops are very active, and he can put his knight into the game. And he hopes by sacrificing the exchange, he has gained a lot of initiative. So after long castles, we have rook to c1 by Carlsen, immediately putting pressure and x-raying the king and queen. That's why we have king b8, moving away from the c file to avoid these threats. And after this, we have queen to g7. Carlsen captures the pawn, and now the queen is pretty active on g7. It's threatening to this pawn on f7. And if you move this rook, it can maybe capture on h7. So we have rook h to g8, attacking the queen, and also putting this rook on a semi-open g file where it can and will exert a lot of pressure. So after this, Carlsen pulls back his queen to b2. Taking this pawn was way too risky, so he chose not to do it. So after queen to b2, we have bishop to g4, immediately threatening to take this knight. And you cannot move your king because I will take it anyway and ruin your pawn structure. So you have to move this knight, but there isn't a really good place to put it. So Magnus puts it to e1. Maybe a better place to put it was d2, but okay, we have knight to e1. And this knight is very passive here. Its primary purpose in this position is defending this g2 pawn. And in this position, Nodirbek sees the opportunity to trade some pieces because he is up in material. So he thinks by exchanging a couple of pieces, this rook will become much more potent and it will just overwhelm this bishop. So after rook to d1, you're sort of forced to trade. So we have rook to d1 and bishop to d1. And this position is very interesting because Carlsen does have the bishop pair, and the black king is quite open, but so is white's because this g file is open, and all of black's pieces are uh, lurking around white's king. You know, the knight will come into the game, the queen can jump in pretty fast. So white needs to be very careful in this position. So after bishop d1, Carlsen realizes this and he puts his bishop back on f1. And I mean, look at this position. Look at all white's pieces. They're all discombobulated, they're uncoordinated, and they're all so passive. They're not doing anything. Black's position is completely safe. None of white's pieces are above the 4th rank or even on it. So yeah, this position is sort of desperate for Magnus. So after bishop f1, we have knight to e5, putting the knight in the center and also threatening some knight to g4 ideas with threats on h2. So that's why we have h3 by Carlsen preventing this. And we have bishop f3 in this position. The main purpose of this move is not to threaten the g2 pawn because it's defended way too well. It's simply to put this bishop on this long diagonal and to d5 where it will be a monster. It will put pressure on a2, on g2 and defend f7 and b7. So this would be an optimal piece. So after bishop f3, we have queen d4. Magnus tries to put his queen on the king side to help defend, and also he centralizes it, and while threatening bishop to d6. So that's why we have rook to d8, stopping this and gaining a tempo on the queen. The queen moves, and after the rook moved from the g file, this bishop is under attack. So Nodirbek moves it. We have bishop to d5, and this bishop is ideal, and it's threatening to take on a2 the next move. So we have queen takes h7 by Carlsen. Carlsen thinks in this position my best option is to just try and take as many pawns as I can and put all my hopes on the passed h pawn. So after queen to h7, we have bishop to c4. Nodirbek doesn't take the a2 pawn, but he offers to trade this very useful light square bishop who is defending and holding white's position together. So after bishop c4, we have bishop to b2. The threat is to take the knight and then to take the bishop on c4. That's why we have bishop takes f1 by Nodirbek. Carlsen takes, and now we have queen to c4. The king has to move when we have king to g1, and now the rook. Sorry, we have a knight to e5 because the knight was attacked, and black is preparing to put his rook down to d1. So after knight to a5, we have knight to f3, and we have queen takes a2, attacking the bishop. The bishop moves to f6, and we have rook d1 check, king h2, and a5. Black starts to push his passed pawn. After this, we have knight to d4 and queen d5, threatening to push this pawn farther down the board, and we have queen c2 trying to defend. And in this position, we have queen to d6 check, f4 is forced, so we have f4. And in this position, Nodirbek sacrifices back the exchange. We have rook to d4, bishop d4, knight d4, e takes d4, and queen to f4. Now this position is completely winning for black because he's up a pawn. We have queen d4, h4, a4, queen to a2, attacking the pawn. So we have f5, we have h5, queen to h8, queen takes a4, queen takes h5, king g1, queen f3, king h2, queen e2, king g1, and now we have queen e5, a very important move, centralizing the queen, attacking the g3 pawn, preparing to push the b5 pawn. And after this, it was a pretty elementary win for black because all you have to do is push the pawn and bring the king up the board. So let's see how he did it. We have king b6, queen g8, and after a couple of moves, we can see the progress that black has made because this king is cut off. And after the move queen to d2 check, Carlsen resigned the game. After b2 he resigned the game because this pawn is unstoppable.